Welcome to a fresh episode of the Genuine ScLoHo Media and Marketing Podcast. My name is Scott Howard, also known as ScLoHo. What's a ScLoHo? Well, it's a nickname that uses the first two letters of my first name, middle name, and last name. That would be ScLoHo, and then mashes them together. ScLoHo began as an email address and then my online persona, and since 2017, a podcast. This is an ongoing collection of media, marketing, and personal insights, and each episode is usually less than 10 minutes long. Today might go a little bit longer. We'll find out here. This is the audio reading of an article that you can read at my website, scotthoward.me. Altogether, I published over 1,700 articles. I've got a couple of free gifts for you, too, with no strings attached. The first one is early access to my Sound Advice newsletter. It's emailed nearly every week with the exception of holiday weeks, and there's a link in each email for more practical tips on the advice that I share. I also use this material in some of my podcast episodes, but that's not until a few weeks have passed since the free Sound Advice newsletter was sent out. Now, the other gift is a complimentary problem-solving consultation. If you are in the Fort Wayne, Indiana metro or close by, it's best to do it in person. But I can also do Zoom anywhere. Drop me a note to scott@scloho.net. That's scott@scloho.net for either one of these offers. Now let's jump into this week's podcast episode, and this one is titled WOWO Works. Today I'm going to share with you why I work for WOWO, also known as WOWO Radio. The reason is it works. Okay, that's an easy answer, but let's dig a little bit deeper. I create advertising campaigns using my primary radio station, WOWO, for businesses and organizations that want to invite our listeners to become their customers. Now, there are 4 other radio stations I have at my disposal that are part of Federated Media here in Fort Wayne, but WOWO is my primary radio station. With dozens of businesses and organizations that work with me year after year, I've got plenty of anecdotal stories that I can tell you, but today I'm sharing some information from another source that talks about the characteristics and value of news talk radio. That's the format for WOWO. This is from an article that came into my email from InsideRadio.com. Let me quote here. What's behind News Talk success as Nielsen's top-rated radio format among persons ages 6 and older, year after year? Research shows it's all about attentive and loyal listeners focused on a trusted source for news all day long, a station where advertising has proven to be especially effective. According to Odyssey's Insights blog, News Talk is home to some of the most loyal, engaged, and influential audiences in media. They don't simply catch headlines, they seek context. They return throughout the day and trust the voices that they hear and act on the recommendations that they receive. Pretty impressive, huh? Well, here's more from that article. In a world where many swipe through news stories online or place their trust in social media for the top stories, News Talk Radio listeners are significantly different. They want context instead of clickbait, the blog says. They listen to trusted hosts, call-in shows, debate issues, and stay connected long after the story breaks. Roughly 1 in 4 Americans now consider themselves to be a news fanatic, checking the news multiple times a day and actively seeking deeper understanding of the issues shaping their communities. Research backs this up. A Nielsen Scarborough study shows that more than half, 54%, of News Talk listeners are called P1s, spending most of their radio time with the News Talk format, compared to about 41% of sports fans who dedicate most of their time to sports. According to Alter Agents, 84% of local news listeners say they trust local news radio outscoring broadcast TV, national news radio, or social media. Okay, so that's nice. But what about the power of news talk radio like WOWO for advertisers? Back to the article again. Not surprisingly, news talk brings advertisers a fundamentally different audience from other formats. Affluent listeners with a median household income of nearly $95,000 and a strong concentration of high net worth consumers, according to the blog. News Talk's listeners are also increasingly mobile with streaming apps and social media and podcasts extending the experience beyond just the broadcast signal. For marketers trying to reach business owners, financial decision makers, homeowners, or affluent adults, News Talk Radio consistently delivers audiences that matter, Odyssey's blog says. For marketers looking to build trust, reach affluent consumers, and drive measurable business results, that's a powerful combination. It's especially powerful for advertisers as, according to Nielsen and MRI Simmons, ad campaigns on News Talk Radio move listeners through each stage of the buying funnel, driving 56% awareness, 47% consideration, and 49% purchase of or conversion among ad-exposed consumers. Okay, me again. I know that's a lot of numbers, so let's wrap this up with one more quote from the article from InsideRadio.com. The blog notes that for News Talk, the brands seeing the strongest results aren't simply buying commercials. They're becoming part of the experience. That can mean host endorsements, sponsored traffic and weather reports, studio naming rights, branded listener text lines, podcasts, community events, or town halls where advertisers show up alongside trusted local personalities. Those opportunities feel less like interruptions and more like participation, and that's exactly why they work. The loyalty shown by News Talk Radio's core listeners is, according to Audacity's blog, difficult to replicate and even harder to buy. News Talk Radio offers something that many channels can't. It offers a daily relationship with listeners that translates into real business results. That's why it continues to be the number one format in radio and why it deserves a place in today's marketing mix. Like I said at the beginning, I've got anecdotal stories from my advertising partners on the power of WOWO Radio and our listeners to help businesses grow. Just ask me. And do you have any questions about advertising and marketing that you don't know who to ask? You can email me, Scott@WOWO.com. That's Scott@WOWO.com. And by the way, even though I'm recording this today at the Federated Media Studios in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I work for WOWO Radio, and this is being promoted by my employer, everything that I say or write is strictly my own thoughts and not necessarily the opinions of Federated Media or any of their affiliations and or advertisers. Remember, feel free to drop me a note to Scott@WOWO.com or Scott@ScLoHo.net. That's ScLoHO.net.
Podcasts by Federated Media.